So let me go now to the most important thing, right? And this most important thing is, well, okay, in that case, we had a function called input, but what about if we want to create our own function, right? And creating functions will be a major part of programming. And we're going to explore that in more detail. Right now, let's get through the mechanics. How do I write a function? Okay, so I'm just going to first show you a function, and then we'll talk about the general idea here. So to create a function, first I write this word def. So this is important. If you click on the word def, you will see a little message at the bottom. It says def defines a function. So def is short for define, and define tells Python, hey, I got a new function. Please try to understand it. Please try to store it. Okay. Then we have to actually write the function. So the function starts off by a name. Now, again, I mentioned you for variables before. Choosing good names is always difficult. So in this case, I want to write a function that will just take a number and double it, right? So for lack of imagination or whatever, but I thought he described the function, I decided to call it double. Okay, you can give it your own name, whatever name makes sense. Take time as you write code to give good names, because then when you come back later, you know what the function is supposed to do, right? If I call this function D, for example, instead of writing double, then it will be hard for me to figure out what does it do. It feels like I'm overstressing this, but I won't have time to come back to names later, right? So make sure that it's a big art to find names quickly when you're writing code. Okay, so double, it takes one parameter. And for a little while today, we will only talk about functions that take one parameter, just to keep life simple. And then the next important thing is the colon here. You see there's a colon at the end of this statement. Python is written to be user-friendly, easy to read, right? So in other languages, you'll have braces like this. To start a function and to end a function, you need braces like this, which kind of disrupts the reading flow a bit. Python doesn't use braces, right? So how does Python know where the function starts? Well, Python knows where the function starts because there's a colon, right? How does Python know where the function ends? That's even more tricky. So what you have to do when you write a function is you have to make sure that the code is indented, right? So if you don't indent this function like this, if you run this function, you'll see you get an error. Okay, so you have to indent a function, and all the lines, if there are multiple lines in a function, all the lines have to have the same level of indent. Today, again, to start off, we'll write functions which have only one line, but later we can write functions with multiple lines. And that's it. After you do this, a function is done. Python knows what the function is. But of course, if I just write a program which looks like this, you see no output. So this means Python knows a function, but it doesn't invoke the function. It doesn't run the function. So to make Python run the function, I have to actually, so even let me remove the print statement here. If I say double 3, and I can save it to a variable, for example, right? I don't know, I'll call it temp for now. Again, you see I have to get a good name for it. And now the function is run. So temp actually contains the result of doubling 3, right? But I don't see it yet. And so I have to use print, and then I can just print out temp, right? And now if I run it, I see the value. So let's understand again quickly. You define a function in the following way. Actually, I've written a little template here. Maybe you guys can look at this with me. So def is used to tell Python you're defining a function. Then you have to choose a name for the function. You need parentheses. Then you can have as many parameters as you need as input for your function. Close the parentheses and a colon. Then you write the body of the function. And the body of the function has to be one indent over. And all the lines have to have the same indent. And finally, if you want to return a value, you return the value. Now, there can be functions that don't return values. So for example, I could have written this function kind of cleverly. We'll talk about this more. I could have just said print 2 times n, right? And since I printed the answer, then I don't need to return anything. So let's see if that would work. So let me just do that. So if I try to run this now, it will run. It doesn't print anything. But why doesn't it print anything? Because I didn't run the function. I only defined the function. So now I have to actually run the function. So I have to say double, and let's take 5 now, just as a number. Now if I run it, you see, you get 10. So remember, again, this is one thing that for newcomers is a little bit, takes a second to understand. The first thing we do is define the function. That just means Python knows what double means. Then the thing we do is to run the function. So I showed you how to define and run a function, and I told you that the return statement is optional. Okay, if you need to return something, then you return the value. Okay, and that's all we need to know about a function. Okay. Now, one of the things I've done, I haven't done it so much, but I'll just mention it right now. Sometimes when you want to make a function and you're not ready to write it, right? So I could just say there, right now I can do double. I don't know what I want to do, but I know I need a function called double. Then I can just say pass, right? And if I say pass, Python will create a stub that has no behavior. So if I run this, it doesn't print out anything. Now, why did I introduce pass to you? I think pass is helpful when you have many functions to write and you know that you need 3 functions, but you don't have time to write all of them. You're going to write them one by one. So for example, if I wanted to create double and then I wanted to create triple, right, a couple of functions, I could just go and make the stub for the function, right? And I say pass every time. Then I can come back and then I can implement this, each of them one by one. Of course, it doesn't do anything. It's just a placeholder. Now I can use this to create exercises for you guys where I can say, hey, if you need to create the following functions, I won't give you the implementation. As an exercise or an exploration, you can implement it. So if you see some code in future where there's pass in that place, it means that you can go, or you should go and you should write the code. Does that all make sense? Hopefully. I didn't see any questions pop up right now, so I'll go to the next section.